It's the Atari 700 Mini. Yeah, subscribe. There has been an insane 25 Atari Flashback consoles, including portables, released since 2004. And while that's not quite one a year, it's pretty darn close. There was an Atari Flashback, Atari Flashback 2, Atari Flashback 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 2 Plus, 40th Anniversary Special Edition, 40th Anniversary Deluxe Edition, deluxe versions for the Flashback 6, Flashback 7, and Flashback 8, Flashback 64, which isn't the Nintendo 64 Flashback, it's a special store-exclusive set with 64 built-in games, Atari Flashback 8 Deluxe Sam's Club Special Edition, Flashback 8 Gold, Flashback 8 Gold Activision Edition, Flashback Portable, Flashback 9 Gold, the Atari Flashback Blasts that I will not get into now, Atari Flashback X, Atari Flashback X Deluxe Special Edition, Flashback 50th Anniversary, Atari Flashback Gold 50th Anniversary, and of course, the Atari Flashback 50th Anniversary Special Turbo Alpha Edition, the World Warriors 2 Dollar Tree exclusive. Whew. Anyway, there's only one Flashback console that can play Atari 7800 games, and you may be surprised to find out that it's the very first one, all the way back from 2004. So from the product's inception, it was meant to include the 7800 as part of the package. Yet all versions from Flashback 2 onward have dropped 7800 support, both in software and cosmetically. This was probably done to lean into the admittedly more popular 2600 aesthetic in games. But what was the first Flashback intended to be? And was it any good? These questions and more will be answered as we dip a toe into the history of the Atari Flashback line of consoles, and take a look at the only Atari 7800 Flashback produced. To give you a little bit of history on how the Flashback line came to be, I have to introduce you to Kurt Vendel. Kurt founded the Atari History Museum in 1997 and ran his own company called Legacy Engineering Group. He loved all things Atari and seemed to have a soft spot for the Atari 7800 in particular. In 2002, Kurt was working with the then current iteration of Atari and had been emailed by Bill O'Shea, the owner of a particular liquidator that was having a ton of success selling off old stock Atari 7800 games. O'Shea wanted to reproduce the Atari 7800, most likely so he could have a console to sell along with the game carts that were doing so well on his website. Apparently things went pretty well. So well, according to Kurt, that they came up with a nice modern case for the 7800, cut a deal to use Bushnell's signature on the cases, and even obtained full chip tapeouts for the Maria and such. The only issue was O'Shea wanted the work done for free, and would not repay the engineering firm until they had reached $200,000 in sales, a lofty goal that they weren't likely to meet, and a deal that nobody in their right mind would take. Even though this deal fell through, something very cool came from it, but we'll get into that another time. Anyway, this failed 7800 revival eventually led to the Atari Flashback console to be released in November of 2004. A mini Atari 7800 with two Proline-S controllers that included pause and select right on the controller. Kurt's own Legacy Engineering Group would be responsible for the design of the units and the software, and he decided to go with the NES on a chip, the same thing that most plug-and-plays had been doing up to this point. But can such a thing properly reproduce or emulate Atari 7800 or even 2600 games? Let's find out. So the Atari 7800 Flashback is incredibly small, and so are the controllers. It feels a little cheap in the hands, especially taking into account that it retailed for $45 in 2004. But I mean, I guess there isn't much to it. Probably a small circuit board and a chip or two and a bunch of plastic. Despite the feel, I kinda like the way the system looks. I mean, I am a 7800 fan, so that's always a plus for me. The packaging and everything is as expected, but let's look at the 20 games on the console and see if it lives up to the expectations. So you get 15 Atari 2600 games and 5 7800 games on the console. 2600 games include Adventure, Air-Sea Battle, Battlezone, Breakout, Canyon Bomber, Crystal Castles, Gravitar, Haunted House, Millipede, the previously unreleased Saboteur, Skydiver, Solaris, Sprint Master, Warlords, and Yar's Revenge. The 7800 games include Asteroids, Centipede, Desert Falcon, Charlie Chuck's Food Fight, and Planet Smashers. The 2600 side is fine, especially considering the product is the first of its kind. Obviously, Activision produced games and the such weren't being utilized up to this point. I would have really liked to have seen more 7800 stuff, but they have some solid choices regardless. 7800 Asteroids and Centipede are highly regarded for their two-player modes. Food Fight is definitely one of the system sellers for most people, and Desert Falcon and Planet Smashers would have been fine for curiosity's sake. They could have done worse, but I do wish there was more. That is, until I actually played the games. It's clear that the NES on a chip was not the way to go when developing the Flashback, and I think if they had more time to pivot during development, they would have. It was likely rushed to get out the door in time for the holiday season, and it shows. I don't want to get too deep into the 2600 stuff, and they do mostly look fine, I suppose. Who am I kidding? It all looks and sounds wrong. I don't know how they messed up 2600 games so bad. But how did the 7800 games fare? Far worse, unfortunately. Asteroids is missing all the charm and challenge of the 7800 version. It's clear they attempted to make it as close as they could, but this is not the Asteroids I grew up with. It's a travesty. Centipede is just as bad. Again, it looks, feels, and sounds so off that I wouldn't recognize it as the 7800 version. It feels like a cheap plug-and-play version, and I guess that's what it is. They butchered Desert Falcon to the point that it's literally unplayable. I couldn't even get the hieroglyphics to trigger properly. And Food Fight is a joke. This was a killer app for most people on the 7800, but here the challenge never ramps up, the chefs never throw food, and the hitboxes are massive. I can't believe they did this to poor Charlie Chuck. He honestly deserves better. Planet Smashers is great though. No, I'm kidding, it sucks. They try to emulate the annoying shooting sound, and I guess they're sort of successful in that. But outside of that, it's nothing like its 7800 counterpart. It's a wonder we got any more Flashback consoles after this one, let alone the mountains and mountains of ones that we did get. But after this, the 7800 didn't get any more love on the Flashback market. And even though people seem to blame him a lot, I don't think it's Kurt Mandel's fault, although he did play a role in it. The product had barely any time to be worked on before being pushed out the door for a holiday release. The Flashback ended up selling 500,000 units, despite offering butchered versions of classic Atari games. And this was definitely something that Atari themselves should not have allowed to hit the market. I mean, this is Atari's legacy. And if the company themselves don't care enough to produce a quality product, then why should anybody buy it or continue to trust them? The games, especially the 7800 ones, featured copious amounts of flicker, terrible collision detection, and missed the point of the originals almost completely in every instance. Thankfully for everybody involved, they managed to mostly redeem themselves with the follow-up to the Flashback. But 7800 support was completely dropped and has yet to return to the Flashback line, despite the ungodly amount of iterations that have been pumped out. After the Flashback 2, AtGames would take over production of the units from then on. Unfortunately, this seemed to partially taint Vendel's legacy, and he truly did love Atari and had a soft spot for the 7800. Kurt Vendel continued to be a valued member of the Atari community right up until he passed away on August 20th, 2020, at the age of 53. The community lost a valuable member and a beloved advocate that day. As for the original Flashback, obviously don't get one. But beyond that, I think we need to voice our opinions and thoughts to Atari. There is interest in more than just the 2600. Yes, the Atari 2600 does represent a big portion of people's nostalgia with the company, but there is interest in more than just that. People would love to experience a new 7800 Flashback, featuring as many games that Atari still owns the rights to as possible. Atari could include games like Scrapyard Dog, Fatal Run, Alien Brigade, Real Sports Baseball, Asteroids, Centipede, Desert Falcon, Food Fight, Planet Smashers, and Motorcycle. And now that they own AtariAge, they could also include amazing homebrew, such as Bentley Bear's Crystal Quest, Failsafe, Dragon's Cash, some unreleased stuff like Sirius, Plutos, and Missing in Action. And hell, I'd go out and call Osmond to get the rights to Ricky and Vicky. I know people would line up to buy it if it had that game on it. But beyond just that, I think people are curious about the 5200, the Jaguar, and even the Lynx. There's no easy and cheap way to experience a lot of this stuff direct from Atari, and I can't help but to wonder why. And again, Atari has access to homebrews from AtariAge for all these consoles, presumably. I think a Jaguar Flashback or mini console would sell pretty well, just because having a small version that played accurate versions of those games would be a fun novelty for most people. So join me in letting Atari know that we want these products more so than just another 2600 Flashback. Heck, we want Atari's other consoles to get just a small piece of love that the 2600 has gotten over the years. In the comments below, I'll have a pinned comment with a link to a petition to Atari that simply asks them to explore more of their history with products and releases that expand beyond the 2600. If that's something you want to see, then please sign it. I'll send it to Atari, and maybe this will be the first step into a future of more than 2600 re-releases. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.